this extraordinary education day, this intersection, this nexus between the extraordinary 75, the students that have been working over the last couple of weeks, engaging, reflecting upon these challenges and problems across, underneath, through disciplinary boundaries, but also our fellows today as well. We're so excited that the fellows have joined us, and those other guests and friends that are in the room today as well. We welcome all of you, and thank you for your participation, not just through the keynote this morning, but in the fishbowl over the last sort of hour and a half as well. I have one job now, which is to get off the stage as quickly as possible. This is such a privilege to be the person that gets to introduce all this work, these 2 weeks, these 75 people, these many countries, these many disciplinary focuses, these different levels of university experience and life experience, the diversity of people that have come together to reflect upon this profound question of our future university. We should begin, as we're going to end in about an hour's time, with a very heartfelt, loving, caring, warm round of applause for the students.
Thank you for being here and still be around at this time. I'm Benedict, hi.
And I'm Shutanuka, hello.
And we would like to present to you the stuff we have been doing the past 2 weeks now, and we are very proud what came out, so yeah.
Yes, so we have been working for 3 weeks with Ars Electronica and Founding Lab. And when we first came, we were very privileged to be divided into topic groups. And we have a total of 6 topic groups of 75 students. Let me quickly go through which members will be presenting today in the topic groups. So first is new materials and robotics. I will be presenting for this topic, followed by Benedict. He will be presenting creative robotics. After that, we have the biotechnology. We have the sensing signal detection and interactivity by Yongjun. And followed by Nathan, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and database. And then we have the subgroup 3, where Anand will be presenting biotechnology and arts, followed by Louisa, brain-computer interface. So maybe we should start with me. So hello everyone, my name is Shutanuka, and for our first presentation, I would like you to go through the beautiful world of origami and robotics. And we were very, very privileged to work with Mr. Matthew Gardiner, whom I will want to introduce you to. And we had a facilitator called Chiara. And Mr. Matthew was very, very kind to us to provide some insights on origami and how we actually fell in love with the topic of origami and robotics in a way. Along with our friends, whose name is right there, and they're also sitting there, some of them. But so let me take you through the subject. So we were having a workshop with Mr. Matthew Garnier in Ars Electronica Future Lab for 2 days straight. And this topic was new material and robotics. And in this workshop, Mr. Gardiner was very kind enough to show us around the lab and take us through the beautiful origami robotics that was there. And we were introduced to how sensor works with the perception of nature and how everything is actually connected. The way he spoke about nature and the new technology merging together to form a perspective was really, really beautiful. And at the end of the workshop, we were able to create these beautiful flowers. Each one had like one flower, which is very with sensors. So it was had motion sensors, soil moisture sensors, and also light sensors. Next, so after our workshop, we also had this one day of public demonstration. So what happened in public demonstration was more about, we wanted to understand how people nowadays perceive robotics and nature in a way. So one of our topic question in our public demonstration was, do you perceive those flowers as a machine or as a nature or as a gift, as a flower? It was very surprising to see that most of the people whom we took survey from chose flower, because the robotics, the autobotics was actually reacting exactly like a flower. It was sensitive, it was like a petal forming. So that is when we started to discuss on the topic that how can we perceive time through origami? How can we perceive time to robotics? And how can we perceive temporality, in another word, in human-robotic interaction using origami? So I have a video presentation where I actually am explaining a more philosophical perspective of how we perceive time through origami, and how our teammate, each of us, has a very beautiful perception and very different way of acknowledging the concept of time and concept of technology and concept of how everything merges together into art. So I hope the video sound works. Let's see.
The act of folding, much like the blooming of a flower, is a testament to human creativity and ingenuity. Origami, the ancient art of folding paper into intricate forms, invites us to ponder the nature of transformation and change. At its core, origami embodies a static moment, frozen in time, like a photograph, capturing a single instance of beauty. However, in the modern era, we introduce the element of time through the marriage of origami and robotics.
Where we're going to be able to do incredible things, but also at this very massive scale where architectures, things that we need in space, things that can unfold.
It folds back and you don't have to make cuts, you don't have to put screws, it stays the same unified material, just has the folds. And the folds, this memory of your act, it makes it work.
Nature's origami, I think of caterpillars. The origami folding changes, the caterpillar moves like this. And as time passes, caterpillars shed their skin to keep growing. You can see time building up, just like how creatures make origami.
You know how you can estimate the age of people by looking at them. You know how you can see, like, for example, have a good guess of how old a tree is by just looking at the tree.
Origami perceive only the corners of time, existing in non-Euclidean space that the human mind has not evolved to comprehend.
Can we breathe life, or at least the illusion of life, into an art form that was once purely static? Robotics, with its mechanical choreography, bestows upon origami the capacity to evolve and unfold, creating an illusion of dynamic existence.
This brings us to the question of asking, is time an abstract construct, an ever-flowing lever, or can it be captured within the folds and creases of paper and the algorithms of machine? Are we, by imparting motion to origami through technology, transcending the boundaries of time? or are we merely manipulating our perceptions of it? Moreover, the importance of origami and robotics invites the introspection into the intersection of tradition and innovation. Are we breathing new life into the ancient practice, thus introducing its legacy? Or are we fundamentally alternating its essence? Does the fusion of tradition and technology represent a harmonious evolution or a paradoxical clash of the worlds? In contemplating these questions, we delve into a philosophical depth of origami and robotics, where the boundaries between art, time, tradition, and innovation blur, inviting us to reconsider our response of reality, creativity, and the march of time itself. Thank you.
So, hello everybody again. I'm happy to present you our team, the Creative Robotics team. And as you can see here, we had the pleasure to work together with Spot. Spot is the robot dog from Boston Dynamics. And this was made possible thanks to Johannes Braumann and Amir Bastan, our workshop hosts. And also I would like to thank the whole team and the great discussions and conversations we had about this topic. And yeah, here is our team. But now let's get to the project itself. We discussed a lot about the interplay between human and machine and their visual engagement. So we focused on the human gaze, but also on the robot's perspective. So for example, Spot has like 5 cameras inside, and then we asked ourselves who is actually watching whom, and we came up with some ideas we want to try out with Spot. For example, we wanted to have Spot as an inspection tool almost, where someone sits in front of him and he's like engaging with you and yeah, looking at you. And then we also wanted to have Spot observing itself. And afterwards we went out into the public and tried to cross some pathways of other people and animals to see how they are going to react to Spot. And yeah, another idea was like Spot walking in a perfect square to show some kind of territory. But actually, I will show you a video and it becomes more clear to you.
Yes. That is the time that the robot establishes. We can pass them through some. Exactly. Yeah. I know that.
might have to cut it short because of the time. What have we learned from our experience with Spot? I think the topic has potential to teach us a lot about ourselves, actually, because we as humans like to, we try to long for connection, and so we anthropomorphize Spot, and we then ask ourselves what actually is Spot. And I noticed that we are kind of projecting our own emotions onto him, and projecting something he actually isn't, but it's more like a reflection of ourselves, how we are feeling towards this technology. And for example, someone said like, oh, he's so cute, or the other person said like, oh, I'm really afraid of it. And so we came to the conclusion that maybe technology is more an extension of ourselves, or a kind of mirror. And it was really interesting for us to see like the ambivalence between like our technical fascination towards it, but also our fear of the unknown, because we never like engage with such a tool or robot. So those are points I would really like to experiment more in the University of the Future. Thank you.
Hello. This is my group, and our topic group's name was Sensing and Signal Detection and Interactivity. And we had Barbara as facilitator, and me and my colleagues had a wonderful workshop together with Miller Puckett. He's a pioneering computer musician and also a significant contributor in real-time audio performance. And together, we went to a public space with a bunch of private sounds to create, interact, and somehow detect the invisible connections we can make. So, as we, every day, I believe, we are always at the intersection of a vast amount of sounds, and some are dismissed as noise, but some are perceived as signals. But there's a lot more sounds in between those spectrums, and we were curious if we could take these sounds into account for social interaction. So we as students living in an era of digital science, I think nowadays digital science allows us to imbue and discover meanings from the most common and trivial events or signals or sensory experiences. Therefore, we were compelled to ask this question: how do sounds blur the lines between private realms and public spectacles? So what we did is we discussed about how we like to bring our own sounds as a network of our own sounds, and then inject this new soundscape into the existing space. So we went to the Hafbahnhof. I believe many people here has also passed by the tram station. And there we tried to read the condition of the public space, and also checked out our device, which was our laptop built-in speaker, so that we could get a understanding of how far our sounds can reach if we were using this laptop, and setting up rules to how we could use and interact with this space. And yeah, and the following day, of the exploration, we did a 30-minute performance-like experiment, which ended up being kicked out by security by just disturbing the existing soundscapes. So I will show a video of what we did. Oh, there's no video. Oh, okay. I will. Yeah, there's no video, so I might explain a bit more from this slide. So we started like that from the ground floor, and then we had a score, like a music score, but for this type of performance. And our movement was based on like flocking algorithm. It's the collective behavior that you can observe in nature, like how birds like make a swarm, so that we can stay within the distance of each other's speakers, but also with a bit of autonomy, so that we can also enjoy the sonic blend that we are bringing into this space, and also providing our own sounds to those who are within our proxemics. So this is one of our teammates just being natural with his laptop turning on speakers. And we had a software. It may be too light to call it a software, but we had a program, a patch made by Miller. I will explain later. And this one, if we had a signed port, so that each of you have a node of a network, and then if you send a signal, you can turn on the samples of other people's laptop, but you don't know who's turning on yours. So it's a very simple setup, but it creates a really like a random interaction within us. And these sound samples, we use prepared sound samples, not only prepared sound samples, but also we recorded on site. But I was talking about private sounds, and what we prepared for each of ourselves was we brought out the sounds that we put affection on it, or sometimes just some samples that you want to turn it on the public space, such like bathroom flush in the middle of the square. And personally, I brought some samples from my hometown. I'm from Korea, and I brought some audio that I can hear from subway station in Korea, and I was curious if people would react if I turn on a sound that I got from my train station into this train station. So this is the overview of the program we dealt with, but this is probably was the most convenient part, because this is a program called Pure Data, and it is actually made by our mentor. So he's the creator of this program, and you can see him working on it, and we were just giving him ideas. We were very free from coding, the dirty stuff. So he set it up, everything from the network and like recording and playing, like all those sampler type of parts. So we had a really privileged moment, so that most of us didn't have any background in public computer music performances, but we were very freed from those digital literacy and allowed to collaboratively shape the idea for the project, focusing more on how we could design this experiment, the sonic experience that we would try to create. And I wouldn't argue that this is always the type of future university that we would like to have, having a really fancy technician as our mentor. I don't think it can happen always, but yeah, our group has a opportunity, such like getting a glimpse of those very innocent moments that we became like a child in a playground of computer music, thanks to our mentor. So at the end, for the visualization, which you can see on the exhibition site, with respect to Miller, we maintained the aesthetics of pure data and created our final visualization. I think audio is not in, so you can, if you are curious about the audio, you can check it out by yourselves. Thank you.
Yeah, so this is what you can see in their booth. So all these groups have a little zone out there and round the corner with our faces on the walls, and you can listen to the music and or the soundscape that they made through the headphones attached to it, and you can watch this. I was doing it in the break actually. It was quite fun. Right. Or do you want to? Yeah. So I was in the machine learning AI database group. This was not something that I knew anything about when I started, and I was quite surprised to be in the group. But I think this goes along with a lot of what people have been saying all day about the idea of taking technology and playing with it and having a sort of play-adjacent learning experience. Because our facilitator, who's called Sarah Siston, she writes zines that explain critical AI, which is kind of like now that artificial intelligence, machine learning models, all of this stuff is available, it's accessible, we can use it. It's almost like we've got, these guys had Miller Puckett to do their coding for them. It's like we had ChatGPT to be an AI for us, kind of. I mean, I know it's a bit different, but like, the accessibility of technology changes the way that we can interact with it. So we were able to have quite a playful experience doing games that some games were trying to use AI, some were trying to challenge what people think about AI. Some of it was trying to help us understand the way that mechanical learning kind of works and maybe the elements that we can do bits of it or not, and the way that what goes in is what comes out. Sort of it's opening the black box technology kind of principle. So we were actually going for research tensions rather than research questions because it was more exploratory. But essentially, I'm louder now. Essentially, it's how can this critical interaction with AI change the way we see the world? Because now when everyone's talking about AI, you see a lot of people go, oh, we're going to use AI and it's going to change the world. But there's no real discussion about what it's for, what it's going to be, how people are going to interact with it. That's not the dominant thing you hear. And I was really excited to learn more because I've heard a lot of weird information, a lot of strange, fearful messages. But actually interacting with people who understand and who have different ideas, this critical AI stuff is a really good bridger for interdisciplinary thinking. So here's our games. We also did a little bit of origami for the little paper hat for the computer. So we made 3 games initially, and none of them worked that well. It rained, so nobody came to play with us really. But we found some friends eventually. The first one, the free fruit game, was designed as a way to show people from one side to the other how a rule that a machine learning system or an AI knows is the technical, it's a tool, right? It's not an intelligence the way we think of it. So what goes in is what comes out. So you would see a display and it would say, is this a pear? And you'd have a picture of a kiwi and you'd say, no, that's not a pear. And the AI or the program would say, yes, it is a pear. And you'd have to guess why. And spoiling the display for you, it's because it's green. So effectively the rule that was in there was green things are pears. That rule is the principle, and humans have to interact with that and guess that. But from the other angle, people have expectations when they see these games. And the third one over there is a similar principle because they tried to play a kind of tic-tac-toe with no deliberate rules. All of these are kind of rule-hidden games. Because we were playing with the idea that machine learning models work with rules and humans do as well, but in slightly fluid, different ways. So we think that the AIs might do things that we can't see because it's of a greater complexity than we can kind of wrestle with internally, but at the same time, people work with rules that they don't know about. So that one was a tic-tac-toe where you don't know the rules, so you have to put an X in a square on the board, and you're not told where you're allowed to put it and where you're not, and you can go and try that later as well. And then the one in the middle, we made ties out of paper for some reason. I'm not quite sure on that one, but we thought it would be fun to try. There's a card game where you sort of prank your friend because you don't tell your friend the rules, and the rules are you have to get rid of all your cards, and there's a secret rule that everyone else knows and you don't. And we thought it would be fun if the AI made the rule. So the AI made a rule for the card game that you could only put a card down if you put it down with your non-dominant hand, first touching your nose and then putting it down. And we tried it on our friends, and it took them a really long time to work that one out. It was very annoying. And in that way, the AI is complicit in the prank. And then the other way around, we were trying to work out how we could get the AI to try to guess the rule, as if it's all of us sitting in a room, and the AI is there, and we're trying to get it to guess how we're trying to prank it. So it's like it's kind of joking around, and it's kind of a little bit childish, but it was kind of an accessible way to interact with quite complicated and quite like media-heavy right now technology. And eventually, so we did these 3 games, and eventually it became a visualization that's in there in our booth, which we called the AI Arcade. And people are invited to come in and sort of play with it and explore the ways that it makes them feel and think about artificial intelligence. So in our diagram that Anand made, essentially we have what it means to be human, what it means to be more than human. So there's the non-human but still life kind of part, and then there's the machines and mechanisms and materials section at the bottom, where AI kind of relates back, because there's the idea that we have the generative agency, that we can create stuff, but when you use AI as a generative tool, it kind of subverts that, even though it doesn't, because what goes in is what comes out. When you don't think about it too hard, it kind of feels creative. So we wanted to use that as a way to joke with people and get it kind of demystified. Who's doing biotech? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anand, and I am an architect to be, and my research is focused on the so-called modern human architecture, hence those weird diagrams that was keep showing on the screen. So I was also feeling so homely to be in the bioarts group, because this group is made up of such fantastic people, and the entire mission of this 2-week workshop is to explore the idea of care through so many different ways. And I was so lucky that I learned so much from my peers about care in so many different forms. And also our facilitators, Bart, Lara, have always been so fantastic. And our speakers, Patricia and Charlotte, one is a scientist, another one is an artist, basically form this kind of parenthood for our entire experience. And as I said, this entire workshop was about care, and we had this very initial question about care. What kind of narratives can we generate as a collective, and for whom through care? So basically through this workshop, we were trying to discover the idea of methodology, a narrative that can be used to collectively tell the story of care. Because we believe that care is not a construct of feminist theory. It's something that we humans all share. It's something that's beyond gender differentiations and different backgrounds. And so the workshop is based on Charlotte and Patricia's project, which has been running for several years, which is called the Collective Uterus. And through this project, they were trying to explore the idea of production rights and the idea of the agency of the organs of production and people of all genders in the production. And based on this initial idea, we had a sort of intervention of care. So we did this so-called performative intervention. So the mission was very simple. We had to transport the collective uterus from founding lab to Ars Electronica. But through this journey, we have to protect it because it's something really fragile and something that hasn't been made entirely. So through this journey, we made it a performance, a procession. And as a beginning stage, we sort of painted all the lab codes so that it's something sends a strong signal, but not so strong because we didn't want it to be a propaganda or protest. And something like a clothes that people wear, which can make the audience feel intimate, but also trying to push forward the questions that we want to ask. And with that, as a sort of background, we went on this journey, this procession, and so we basically transported the uterus all the way in the tram, in the rain, and on the road. It was actually fascinating because on that day it was raining and we had to basically use our umbrellas to protect the uterus and to protect each other. And through this kind of active way of performance of care, we were also exploring the idea of collective care. To whom should we care for and through what kind of process should we care for? I was asked to put this image really large because Amanda's favorite image, so that someone from the tram that we didn't know before, and at some point Patricia was starting to sort of having a read out session of the poetry that she wrote about uterus. And so fascinating to see how the audience who didn't know the language that Patricia was using at all to write a poem, and how they were kind of touched by only the sound only, and how our performance was sort of beyond language and culture. And also the idea of collective care was also, they sort of always appeared in the procession procedure. And we cared for each other because we didn't want each other to get a cold. And we cared for for speakers, and we cared for the organ. And building on all of these ideas, we had this booth and the expo exhibition device. Which by the way is somewhere there, so if you are interested, you can have a look. We were trying to build on the idea of care through this intimate structure that provides a temporary sitting or a place for anyone who wants to have a rest or have a talk. It's really a simple idea, but somehow it's powerful because when people are immersed with that intimate space, they somehow are more open to their own vulnerability, and they can share each other with their sadness, with their fear, in this kind of temporary but intimate ephemeral space. And so what we have learned from this journey is that bioart is not science, it's not art, it's something in between, it's a process. And care itself is also a material process. The labor of care is tiring, but it's material, it requires commitment. And through that journey, through the process of care, we are all cared for. And performative research itself is both fundamental in nature and process-driven. It is not dictamous, but transformative. It is a journey that has the power to shift, to change, to evolve, and to reform. And since that's also basically the definition of human, every human being has the ability to grow, to evolve, and to reform. We believe that queerness is not something that differentiates people. Everyone is queer in a way because we all have the ability to transform. And nature itself is also queer because nature is about growth. So I guess the conclusion for our workshops is that nature is queer and the journey is all important.
I have come to this stage again. Hello, I'm Louisa, as you probably know at this point. I was from the Brain-Computer Interface team. We worked with Christoph Guger from GTEC and Anouk Wieprecht, and we had our facilitators Regina and Adaze We had a team that was mostly consisting of cis women, and I think in a way, not only cis women, but mostly, in a way I think that kind of, not biased, but it really guided our conversation, and humanities-based people. We probably had one of the most interesting topics, but at the same time, because of some time constraints, we couldn't really develop something very technically substantial. So we ended up focusing more on the discussions that we could have about what these brain-computer interfaces actually meant. So we started by talking and dividing some research questions, and one of the things that we decided to focus on is whether different minds, they react differently to the same action or stimulus or input. From the perspective that in order to use these devices, you need to have a certain degree of attention and focus, and we wanted to see if there are certain types of movement that could improve that kind of activity. We had, here you can see our team members, they were wearing this cap, the unicorn cap, and they had to control with their thoughts this little ball robot. And we changed colors whenever we changed the mental strategy to see if anything helped it move better. But one of the things that happened was that our team members felt extremely vulnerable by having something that was reading their thoughts. And then we started to think about the aspect of transparency, honesty, and vulnerability, and whether when you have like this, you're displaying your brain information, you're actually talking about being honest, the extent to which this is actually showing your real thoughts. Is this honesty? Is this transparency? So can we have some sort of computer-mediated honesty? And in that, we developed the idea of a mask, like a screen, that you can have a screen that's going to show your brain information. So if I do that, if I show you, we had people with neurodivergent people in our team, so they thought, if I can show you the amount of stress that I have going on in my brain right now, is this going to change the way you're going to treat me? Or for women, if I'm going through a particularly difficult period in my hormonal cycle, if I can show you like the level of stress that I'm experiencing right now, is this going to change the way you treat me? Is this going to improve our communication? So we talked a lot about that. If these brain-computer interfaces, they can help foster more understanding of the different ways that people think and navigate the world. Yeah, we did talk a lot about they can also mediate these conversations, how we were talking earlier today. You see, everything's connected, the conversations, the points that we've been discussing. But we also talked a lot about how if I'm using these devices to mediate my thoughts, the sort of impact that they actually have on my thoughts. So can we create a sort of feedback loop between the brain and the machine? Can we communicate with the machine with intimacy? All of these thoughts, but at the same time, we don't have a conclusion yet. All of this is still a bit not distant because we worked with devices that are quite accessible, but it's accessible but still not really present. So we really don't know what's going to happen, but that's what we've been thinking. RBCIs and computer-mediated transparency, the answer to our communication problems. And yeah, we don't have an answer for that, so I'll leave you with that.
And so that basically brings us to the conclusion part of all the 6 topic groups. I mean, it's a very short time. We only had like 2 weeks to develop everything, so everything was still rough, and we all feel like we could have done better. There's always something that we can develop more. And I think that's the nature of a summer school because it's always so short. But I think what's important is that what we've learned from this, something that's fluid, something that can be applied in a much grander level. It's really interesting to see that when you basically bring all the 6 topic groups together, you create this diagram, which basically would have the ability to discuss the agency of knowledge production. So that in history, as a starting point, we always started to think about knowledge production as the retrieval man, what ability of the retrieval man would have, who's always regarded as the artist, the creator, who is basically independent from all the other roles in society. And then we realized that's sort of very limited idea. We also need to include the gendered, racialized, and marginalized people and roles in the discussion of knowledge production. And at some points in history, we also realized that maybe it's not enough to discuss humans in knowledge production only, because when we talk about non-humans, like organisms and machines, they also have the agency in the current discussion of knowledge. So it's a process of eco-vitalization and reflection. And so, for example, by combining the idea of the gendered and marginalized role and non-human organisms, we've discussed the idea of care in bioart by combining the idea of non-human robots and humans, and basically how they reflect each other and how humans can learn from the robots. We've developed the idea of creative robotics, etc. and etc. So I guess what we have learned is not only the 6 topic groups that can only last for 2 weeks. It's something goes beyond this short time. I believe that we have learned about care, reflection, communication, interaction, perception in this system. And so in the end, I guess it's not about the 6 topic groups anymore. So when talking about new materials and robotics, we were having discussion of time, how we perceive time. Do non-humans also have the agency to perceive time? When we talk about robotics, it's about how do we reflect each other. When we talk about machine learning and data bias and AI, it's about vitalization of each entity, even though they are non-human. When we talk about interaction and composition, and it's always the question of how do we interact with the humans, others, and the non-human others. And of course, when we talk about bioart, it's always a gesture of care. When we talk about computer and brain interface, it's about communication. So I guess it's a short time after all, but these 6 keywords can somehow be fundamental to the construction of a new university, because they are not only values that we've learned from an academic perspective, they can also be an input for, they can basically be the pillars for a new university which values diversity, transdisciplinary, and collaboration. And so I guess that's also something that we can keep thinking about even for our entire lifetime, because these are questions that we may never be able to solve. But as what we have presented in the presentation, the process is all that important. And I thank you all. I'm feel that we. Everyone who created this opportunity for us all, so that we get to be in the process. I guess that's it. Thank you so much.
They say that a theory, when you come up with a new theory, you've got to have 3 things. You've got to have a predication. You've got to have a set of core assumptions. Then you've got to have an articulation. You've got to have vocabulary in terms of reference. And then you've got to have a logic. You've got to have a method, a way of working. So you've got to know where you're starting from, how you're going to articulate and communicate, and how you're going to proceed. So, you need that foundation, that lexicon and that logic. That's what you've done. You were asked to reflect upon what it would be like to prototype thinking and activity in a new university. So the act of coming together, the act of assembly itself, your diversity, reflecting a new way of coming together and holding a space together in higher education. You were asked to show us what learning could look like. A collaborative form of learning you showed us. A equitable, ethical, experiential, experimental, energetic, exciting form of learning. And you were tasked with showing us what the art of the possible might be, what could be made in that extraordinary, inventive, innovative, transparent space. You've done so much more than that. Through giving us a set of core values, giving us a vocabulary, and actively demonstrating how to convene and show up and work together, you've built a theory. You've built a theory of how to be a university in the 21st century. So we're going to do a couple of things, and then we're going to give the biggest round of applause that you've given in your life. But before we get there, 7:30, Train Hall, open event where you're formally shared with the world. You're our little beautiful secret at the moment, but you'll be shared with the rest of the world. Thank you for your contribution, the fellows that have stepped forward and leaned in throughout the day, the other supporters and other hosts and speakers and parts of IDSA and Ars Electronica and the venue that have helped us, including the technicians and the support on the cameras and the sound that have made this all work smoothly today. Thank you very much for all your talent as well. But our final thank you should go to not us, but the students whose day it has been today. Thank you so much. We cannot wait to see what you do next. Ladies and gentlemen, the students.